Hey guys, it's Trina, and it's that time again where I show you everything that I've read this month. Before I get into all of the books I read this month, I do want to take a moment to mention a new booktube channel that I discovered this month, and that is Raul from Latin Lector. He reads a great mix of adult and YA books. He loves mystery, horror, dystopian, science fiction. I just think that he's great. I love the perspective that he offers on books, especially as an adult reader of YA like I am myself, and I really hope you guys will check out his channel because I just think his videos are quality. So if you remember, my TBR for August consisted of 3 books. Let's see how many of those I actually read. Yay, I read all of them. It's always nice to actually read everything that you set out to read, even though it was only 3 books. But 3 books is 3 books, and I did actually read 12 books this month, as well as DNFing 1, which I will kind of briefly touch on that one as well. My reading statistics for this month were that I read 7 novels, and 1 of those was an audiobook. I also read 3 comics, 1 graphic novel, and 1 book of poetry. My readings did range from 2.5 stars up to 5 stars, with most of my reads being 4 and 5 stars. So I had a really great reading month in terms of I read a lot and I was pretty much enjoying what I was reading, because last month I only had 1 5-star read. So let's get into the books, and like usual I will be doing this from lowest rating to highest rating, ending with my favorite book of the month. So first let's talk about the DNF book. I did DNF The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh this month, and it's not that I DNF'd it because it was awful, it's just that I really was not connecting with it, and I did get halfway. I was like around 200 something pages in. I don't know, it just wasn't really striking me as something that was different and fresh. And the main reason that I DNF'd it was because it was due back at the library. So this wasn't just an all-out hatred of the book, it just hadn't captured me enough to want to pay library fines for it. The further I get away from it, like the less I actually care about finishing out that story. So I don't know. I've heard a lot of people say great things about it. I've heard a lot of people say it's just got beautiful writing, but I didn't really see that. But I will tell you that I love that this is a retelling of a story that isn't very commonly retold. So I love the book for what it is. I just think it might have been something that wasn't clicking with me. So my lowest rated book of the month was Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. This book follows a reporter who is returned to her small hometown to investigate a series of missing girls. One of the girls has turned up dead, the other one is still missing. So she's gone home for the first time in several years, and that's kind of causing her to face some of her own personal demons. This is Gillian Flynn's debut novel. I did find the writing to be very, very basic, and a lot of the characters, I felt like they were lacking true characterization. Some of them felt like cardboard cutouts of characters that you would expect to be in some kind of murder drama like this. There's a big trigger warning for cutting. The main character does self-harm, and it is described pretty descriptively. There is also child violence because one of these girls has turned up dead, so it's kind of describing what had been done to her. And I was buddy reading this with my friend Becca, and she is a mother, and she said that that made her very, very uncomfortable. What I was really uncomfortable with was the sexualization of preteens. Like, these 13-year-old 8th grade girls were going out and doing some pretty risque stuff, and we were actually being told about it, and their body parts were being described, and I don't enjoy that. You can't show that on TV or in movies. I don't want to read about it in books, you know? I did enjoy reading the book, and I always wanted to know what was happening. I just felt underwhelmed. And also, obvious villain was obvious, and a questionable triangle of insta-love was very questionable, so I did have 1 3-star read this month, and that was The Last Unicorn graphic novel by Peter S. Beagle, adapted by Peter B. Gillis. This is the story of a unicorn who learns that she is the last, and she decides to go on a quest and figure out what has happened to all the other unicorns, and along the way she just meets a great cast of characters. There's a sorcerer, there's a wicked king, there's a handsome prince, there's the evil red bull. It's just a very whimsical fairy tale type story. There was a movie made of this story in the 80s. It was an animated cartoon, and I watched that a few times when I was a kid. And there is a book out there that the movie and this graphic novel were based on, and I have not read that book, but when I found out there was a graphic novel, I was like, that's a really cool, quick way to kind of just relive that nostalgic factor. So I did really enjoy getting to re-experience this story, and the artwork was very beautiful. However, I'm not sure how well suited this story was for this format, because it felt kind of choppy at times. I don't know if the story just is like that, because like I said, I haven't read the book, but I did enjoy it about middle of the road because it was great to relive some nostalgic childhood feelings. Moving into my 4-star books, I read P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han, which is book number 2 in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before duology. I won't get into what this book is about, but the first one is about our main character, Lara Jean, who writes letters to all the boys she thinks she's loved, and one day they all get sent out. So she's having to confront her feelings to these boys. She actually starts building some relationships that she probably wouldn't have had a chance to build if those letters had not been sent out. This is a really light YA contemporary romance. I do think that fans of the Anna and the French Kiss series would enjoy these books. They're really what you would think of for light summer reading. However, the first book is actually set during the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. So this would be a great quick read for the end of the year if anyone is looking for that. I just thought I would throw that out there. But I did really enjoy this book. I thought that it closed things up well. It also touched on some things that I wished had been explored better from the first book. Thought it was a great ending to the duology. I really enjoyed this series. I'm planning to have a series review up sometime in the near future. My next 4-star read was Second Helpings by Megan McCafferty. This is book number 2 in the Jessica Darling series. It's a YA contemporary series that's been around since 2001, and it follows our main character Jessica Darling. The first book is set in her junior year of high school, and then the series does follow her as she goes off to college, so it grows with her, and the books are basically like you're reading her diary entries. I have really been enjoying this series, and I did like book number 2 a little bit better than book number 1. Next, I read 2 of the Walking Dead comic books by Robert Kirkman, and I rated them differently, but I want to talk about them together. So volume 13, I rated 4 stars, and I gave volume 14 5 stars. If you aren't familiar with The Walking Dead, it is a zombie apocalypse comic series following one main character, Rick Grimes, as he's just trying to survive in this apocalyptic world, outrun the zombies, find supplies, and then he just kind of meets up with different survivors as the series goes on. If you do like the TV show, I would highly recommend checking out the comic book as well. You can read them and watch them at the same time without really spoiling anything, because the show definitely treats the different characters and situations much differently than how the comic books does, so every character isn't necessarily going to have the same outcome on the TV show. I have a couple of books that I rated 4.5 stars this month, and the first of those was Sex Criminals Volume 2. This is a comic series, and I have talked about my feelings on Sex Criminals several times already. There is very graphic, mature content, but I don't think it's done in a gratuitous way. The story is about a main character who can stop time when she has sex, and she thinks she's the only one that can do it, and then she meets a man, and when they get into a relationship together, she finds out that he can do it too, so they can kind of run around in the frozen time together, and they decide to use their power to rob a bank. But there's so much more to it than just robbing banks. I think that really it's an exploration of a relationship between these two people. I love this style of narration, and I love the characters in this series. They feel like the most fully rounded characters that I've ever met in a comic series. I don't want to say too much about it, but there is kind of like a mental health condition that is explored in one of the characters, and I just love that it's being represented and that that character is still the romantic, sexy lead. I would definitely say this is kind of a comedy. There's a lot of sex humor, and that's not necessarily up my alley, but they make a lot of social commentary on things like different social media that we use and just how we interact with people today, and I really love that kind of humor. Volume 2 made me laugh out loud so bad, so I gave it 4.5 stars. The other book I rated 4.5 stars is You by Carolyn Kepnes, and I buddy read this with Claire from the Book Fox. This story is actually following the point of view of a stalker as he is stalking a young woman that he's become obsessed with, and the way that he narrates the book is as if he's talking to her. So it's like, you walked into the store today, and when you paid for your books, I got your name off of your credit card. And so it feels like you're really in the book. I was really expecting it to feel like someone was talking to me, like I was reading a letter addressed to me, and it did kind of feel that way, but after a while it made me feel like I was from the point of view of the stalker, and that was so unsettling. He obviously does a lot of questionable things, but I think what this book really got right is that most of the characters in here are pretty despicable, and so sometimes the character that you like the most is the stalker. And the stalker also has a lot of traits that in any other character would probably be really relatable and appealing, like he works in a bookshop and he has a great love of literature. She knew her audience. If you're reading this book, you probably like books, so you're going to probably feel the same way about some books that he does, and so it's really tricky about, do I sympathize with him or not? And I found myself kind of straddling that line a bit, and I just loved that experience. It was very, very different. It is definitely a thriller. It's not scary. It's a little bit creepy and unsettling. It is also kind of explicit. There's some sexual content in it. I've heard some people call it an erotic thriller. I definitely don't think it's erotic. I don't know very much about erotica, but I would guess that erotica is supposed to be appealing, and this was not done in an appealing way. Not everything he was talking about was consensual or done with even with their knowledge. I do think it might be a little bit explicit and a little bit dark for some readers. However, I highly recommend this book. It was just such a totally different experience than anything else I've ever read, and it did kind of push my comfort zone. But if you've never read anything in second person, I think you should definitely try it. So the last 4 books I read this month were 5-star reads, and one of these is I Could Be on That, and Other Poems by Cats by Francesco Marciuliano. This is just a coffee table book. It's a book of poetry written by cats, and it is hilarious. I could definitely see my cat thinking all of these things as I was reading it. I don't think I've ever laughed so hard while reading anything. And I did read this book for Booktubeathon, and this is the one that I did my scene reenactment challenge on if you want to check out that video. Next I have Daughter of Deep Silence by Carrie Ryan, and this is a YA contemporary revenge thriller. It's about a girl who was on a cruise ship and the cruise ship sank, and there were only 3 survivors, and the other 2 are lying about what really happened, and she makes it her priority to out them and to get revenge because she's lost everything. The relationships were really complicated because she's also not exactly who she says she is. You find that out in like chapter 1, so don't worry, that's not a spoiler. I just loved the theme of revenge. I definitely feel like it earned a full 5-star rating, and I did read this one also for Booktubeathon, and I did my trailer challenge for this book. Hopefully it will make you want to read it because I loved it. It was a great book. Next, I finally finished Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. This is book number 3 in the Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones series, and I actually listened to this on audiobook. I had drawn out of my TBR jar challenge for this month to listen to an audiobook. I loved it. It's my favorite in the series so far. So much happens. Love the audiobook. The narrator is Roy Dotrice. Every book in the series is 5 stars for me, so definitely add another one to it. Finally, the last book I read this month, my favorite book of the month, is The Martian by Andy Weir. 5 stars, 10 stars, 50 stars. I absolutely loved this book. It is about an astronaut named Mark Watney. While he and his crew are exploring the surface of Mars, there is a big unexpected dust storm, and he gets injured and kind of blown off into the storm, and his crewmates have to evacuate, and they leave him behind because they assume he's dead, but he actually is not dead. But now he has no way of contacting them or contacting Earth to let anyone know that he's alive, but the next planned ship coming to Mars isn't coming for 4 years. So he's got to try to figure out how to last that long. And we also get some points of view in this book from NASA back on Earth as they're realizing that he is still up there, and that really added a scope to it, like how big of a deal that this would be in real life. This is one of my absolute favorite books of all time. It took me through the emotional ringer. Mark is such a humorous character. I loved his outlook on the situation. He made me laugh, and this book also made me bawl. Just the struggle that he was facing was so horrible, and just seeing him overcome it, and just seeing everyone kind of come together and try to figure out how to get this one man home and how to help him survive as long as he can. It really put me in touch with what it is to be human, and I cannot sing enough praises to this book. I do have a full review up on this book. I will link that below and up here if you would like to check that out, but loved it. Favorite book of the month, favorite book of this year, favorite book of the past 5 years. Read it! Only if you want to. So this is everything I read this month, and I hope that those reviews have helped you decide if you want to maybe check any of these out. If you have a question about any of these books that I didn't cover, please let me know what it is. I'll try to help you out. And let me know what your favorite read of August was. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye! Oh no.